Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Turn the Page podcast. I am your host, Paige, and I'm so excited to have you here with me for another week. In this episode, I am going to be discussing some more sensitive subject matters, such as suicide and self-harm, and some statistics on the realities of these situations in specifically young women, teenagers, and how social media is in direct correlation to some of these statistics. I want to preface this by saying that I know how tender these conversations can be. And as a mother of a teenager, I take full accountability and utilize significant intention in having this conversation. I want it to be loving. I want it to be informational. And I just want to speak on it because honestly, it's a conversation that is happening often in my friend circles and with other parents and with my children. And so, as we continue through this conversation, I want to do it with respect and care. And so, if any of these subject matters feel triggering to you, this might be the episode to skip. But if you are curious about learning more, hearing a little bit about my perspective, learning about some of these statistics that I have gathered, please hang around. I think the more knowledge and awareness we have, the more we can make intentional decisions for ourselves and for our children. So, that all to be said, I have shared over the past couple weeks how chaotic my mind has felt, how overwhelmed and overstimulated, and how stressed and heavy the things that are continuously going through my mind have gotten. I've had some great conversations with some people that are close to me. I've done a lot of journaling, said a lot of prayers, and have scheduled a session with my energy healer this week. And so, as I'm trying to set myself up for success, I've also been having a lot of conversations with my daughters. My oldest daughter is 13, my youngest daughter is 6, because we all have big feelings. We all have big feelings, and we all have to learn and utilize the tools that we are given to be able to navigate those in the best way possible so that we can find peace, so that we can search for joy and create that within our lives and feel more empowered to be our authentic selves and to love ourselves for who we are when the noise gets really, really loud outside. And specifically raising girls, raising a teenage girl, those things can be really tricky. Those teenage years are hard. Your body is going through so many changes and your mind is expanding. Your perspective is shifting and you want to belong. You want to fit in. You want to feel loved and accepted. And learning the lesson that that comes from within first is really hard. I didn't figure out till I was 30. And so I try to do it with as much grace as possible. It doesn't always happen that way, but I do my best and I do what I can to create a safe space for my children and any other child, woman, or male that comes into my orbit, whether it's in the salon or it's in my life or it's through this podcast and this platform. Because I think that it's important that we all know that we're not alone in this. We're not alone in the heaviness. We're not alone in the confusion and the uncertainty. We're not alone in the ways in which we can begin to feel isolated in a world that keeps us accessible to others so significantly. And of course, what do I mean by that? I mean that We have so much access to each other through social media, through our phones, through email, text, phone call. It's like at our fingertips all of the time. Do we feel as though people should be able to have contact with us? If we're creating a platform, we feel like we have to continuously be creating content and to be showing up for these people who follow us and are looking to us for whether it's inspiration or answers or knowledge. And it can be really hard to like set those boundaries and create those boundaries. Even with our work, our email is available to us on our cell phones. We feel like we need to be accessible, whether it's through work or our children's school or their grades or, or phone calls, text messages. When I was growing up, we didn't have cell phones. We had a home phone. And if you weren't home to answer the phone when it rang, they would leave a voicemail and you would call them back whenever you had the time or the capacity. Things have changed a lot. Things have changed rapidly, and technology is advancing quicker than any of us can really attain any kind of perspective on. And it's hard for us to really truly grasp that ripple effect. We feel it, but it's hard to really understand how it's affecting our lives, usually until something big happens, until something major happens. And so I think part of what I have had to do and what I've had to learn with my relationship with social media is that you have to create boundaries. You have to constantly be intentional with your usage, your consumption, and your creation with it, because it is something that can reach the masses and it is something that can allow the masses to reach you. And that is a very big energy exchange. And that can be something that can infiltrate your life pretty significantly and the way in which you feel. Now, my oldest daughter, she's in 8th grade. She's going to be a freshman this next year. And she's been asking to get social media. She's been asking to have access to some of these platforms. And she is a crazy cool kid. She's super responsible. She's very mature for her age. She has an old soul. But she also has really big feelings. And she is very sensitive to the energy that she's around, the energy that she's consuming and absorbing. And so the answer her father and I have given her is no, not yet. We don't feel as though you're ready. That doesn't mean that I'm passing judgment on anybody who allows their child at that age to have social media. I think that as parents, when we can be intentional about the decisions that we make or allow our children to make, that is how we learn and grow together. And these are just the decisions that, you know, me and my children's fathers have decided to implement into our life that suit us the best at this moment in the ways in which we feel as though we are protecting them mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so I think that everybody deserves to navigate this in the way that they feel is best for themselves, for their family, and for their children. This is just the route in which we've chosen to take. And I have been influenced a lot by a documentary that I watched back in 2020, and it was called The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix. I highly recommend, if you haven't watched it, to watch it. I am going to sit down actually with my daughter and rewatch it together, because I think, like I said, the more information that we have, the more knowledge that we have, the more intentional we can be about our decisions. And so telling my daughter no to getting social media in middle school hasn't been easy. And it's led to a lot of really intense conversations, because I think within every decision that you make, there is a light that comes through those decisions as well as a shadow. And that's just the energy that exists in everything. And so for us, in these conversations and in these situations, it has shown us both sides of this. And the Social Dilemma documentary that I watched was one of the things that really started to lay a foundation for me with my consumption of social media. And then, as well as leading me into helping my daughter to make these decisions and for me to help her in this life, to guide her, to protect her, and to just, again, be really intentional. And the Social Dilemma is about the effects of social media. It is a lot of these CEOs, creators, and people who have worked for specifically Google, Pinterest, Instagram, Meta, all of these companies. They have worked within these companies, and they started to see the shadow effects of what social media was doing to our mental health. And so they came together and they created this documentary so that people have access to the information. They didn't know when they were creating the like button that there was going to be just as much negative come from people seeing those numbers as there would be positives. And now, obviously, being 2026, we have more information. We have more understanding of the ripple effect that social media being available specifically on our cellular devices is causing and creating within our world. And so when I watched that, it really inspired me. It really inspired me to take a look at that. It really inspired me to like understand and see things from a different perspective. And as I've carried that into my life, as I've carried that into 2026, I recently just got off a 3-day social media little mini cleanse because I felt my brain, as I explained to you guys the last couple weeks in my episodes, is I have felt my brain being so overactive and so sensitive to outward energy and consuming so much of the noise that I couldn't hear my own intuition, that I couldn't get clear and find clarity on my own thoughts and feelings because I was absorbing way too much. The ways in which I do that specifically that shows up in my life is through social media. I can find myself wanting to turn my brain off and then I'm like scrolling, and it doesn't matter if you set limits. I set limits. I set data limits on my phone. But even if it was just 45 minutes on TikTok, in that 45 minutes, I was absorbing so much. It was making me uneasy. It was making me restless. It was making me even more confused. And so I was like, okay, we need a palate cleanser here. We're going to delete Instagram and social media, Instagram and TikTok off our phone for 3 days. And we're just going to breathe. And even though the irritability and like the frustration that I had been feeling bubbling under the surface for all of these other things that are currently taking place in our life, didn't diminish completely, but it did crank down the dial. And it was because I allowed myself to just be fully present and immersed in my life instead of in the environment of all of these people that I would absorb and consume on social media. I'm not making this episode to completely dog on socials. I'm not. They have ways in which they can really unite people and create community and connection and a togetherness. I think that it's a beautiful way to express our creativity and to share our passion projects. I utilize it for this specific podcast. But like I said, I think the ways in which we have to approach our relationship with it need to have a lot of discernment and a lot of awareness and a lot of intention. And so that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to create. That's what I'm trying to utilize in this platform. And so when I talk about it, when I talk about it with my oldest daughter, when I talk about it with my 6-year-old, because she also likes to get on the iPad and have screen time and watch YouTube videos and things like that. And I have lots of boundaries. I have lots of boundaries around these things. And so I explain to them my why. And they don't have to agree with it. And most of the time they don't. But I hope that I'm at least planting seeds for them to see this world, this rapidly advancing world, through a different lens. And even when it's hard, even when it's difficult, even when it causes arguments or emotions, I try to hold space for that. And, I've said to my daughter, I don't actually understand. I don't actually understand what it feels like to be the one kid in your friend group that doesn't have social media. Because when I was in middle school, social media wasn't a thing on our cell phones. I had MySpace on the computer when we had dial up internet, and it took a lot of effort to be able to have access to it. But it wasn't until 2009 that social media became available on our cell phones. And so I don't actually know what it is that she's going through. But what I can do is I can hold space for that and understand her feelings are very valid, but then also hold my boundaries and again, explain to her my why. And my why started with this documentary, The Social Dilemma. And so I want to read a few statistics from that documentary specifically. This released in 2020, and two of the most prominent statistics that stuck out to me when I watched this documentary was that there was an 189% rise in young girls being hospitalized for non-fatal self-harm, ages 10 to 14. And that being the age in which my daughter is, now brings up so much emotion. It brings up so much fear. It brings up so much uncertainty. And it rose 62% in the ages 15 to 19. And I know I had a friend in school, again, before social media was even accessible to us in this amount, who struggled with self-harm. And, seeing the ways in which those percentages have risen, and these are statistics from now 6 years ago, but these statistics were like this heartbreaking realization that some of this didn't really even hardly exist before social media became accessible to us on a regular basis, in our hand, in our face, 24/7. And seeing that there are so many young, beautiful, bright souls that are struggling in this capacity, that they do want to harm themselves or they do want to hurt themselves, is one of the reasons that I have told her no, that I have held her back from having access to this world. Now, does it mean that the no is going to be forever? No. But we will be intentional about when that time feels right. And there will be a lot of boundaries around it. We want to think that it will never happen to us. We want to think that it'll never happen to our children. We want to believe that we are protected from the shadows of this world. But it is unfortunate for us to understand and realize that none of us are immune to anxiety, depression, intrusive thoughts, suicidal thoughts, and that darkness that can appear, unfortunately, in our lives, in our minds, and in our bodies. Sometimes we don't understand how to utilize the tools around us to ask for help. We feel ashamed, we feel scared, we feel uncertain, especially when we're young. It's hard enough for adults to admit when they are struggling. Imagine how difficult it can be for these kids who don't even have the emotional maturity yet, because their brain isn't developed in the capacity enough to be able to describe to us the intensity of the feelings and the emotions going on in their minds. And like I said, these statistics are not because I'm trying to pass judgment on anybody's decisions. I just think that when we can come together and we can understand and see the numbers, we can protect ourselves and our children that much more in whatever capacity we decide. Maybe that's checking in with them like, hey, what's been going on? How are you feeling when you're on social media? How are you feeling after you get off social media? And so on and so forth. And, like I said, I think that we can believe, we can see these children that we love so deeply, that we love so intensely, and we want to believe that they're not going to struggle. We want to protect them from their struggle. And that's why I've explained to my daughter, I just don't think the answer is yes yet. Maybe next year, maybe when you enter into high school, maybe when you're 16, I'm not sure the answer. But then I also see the side effects of that decision. She feels left out when it comes to other friends being on socials and her not. She feels as though she doesn't have as much to talk about when the conversations surround the things that are being seen on social media. And that can also be hard. That can also be a struggle. And I honor that. I respect that. I validate that. But I also feel like at this point, the risk is a little bit greater than what in her mind would be the reward in allowing her onto social media. Like I said, her dad and I have not decided when that will take place, but these are the reasons and the information that I have attained that have given me the perspective that I do have now. And so I just want to share it. I want to share it because I think that it's important. And another statistic that was presented in this documentary was that 70% for older teen girls, 70%, the number for suicide, children lost to suicide in older teen girls rised 70% when social media became accessible on cell phones from 2009. So from 2009 to 2020, which is a very, very short window for a very, very large percentage. For younger teen girls, it rose 151%. 151%. And recently, a community near us lost a 14-year-old girl to suicide. And their community is experiencing the ripple effect of that. Cyberbullying played a factor. Bullying in school also played a factor. And this community is now feeling that. They are feeling the effects of that ripple effect, and a family had to lay to rest a beautiful, young 14-year-old girl. And so to hear those statistics is alarming. To hear those statistics is alarming. And I want to pause to say that if you are a young person listening to this podcast, if you are an adult person listening to this podcast, and you have felt those feelings and you have experienced those suicidal thoughts, it is never too late to reach out for help. There is a suicide hotline. I will drop that number in the bio of this episode. And I know that there are so many ways in which you can utilize technology in a way to find someone to support you. Reach out to a school counselor, reach out to a family friend, a person that you feel safe being vulnerable with, but you are not alone. And tomorrow is a new day. And there is beauty that can be found, even in the midst of so much darkness. This is your reminder to never give up hope. This is your reminder that you are not alone in this world. And this is your reminder that if social media is creating a negative side effect in your life currently, it's okay to disconnect for a while. Some more statistics that I found was that social media use in adolescence can impact brain development and subsequent future mental health outlook. Social media use is a predictive decrease in life satisfaction in girls ages 11 to 13 and boys ages 14 to 15. And that was gathered by the Journal of Technology and Behavioral Science in 2020. Teens and adolescents experience cyberbullying on social media platforms, and almost 2 in 3, 65% of those involved in cyberbullying had higher scores of anxiety and depression symptoms compared to those who weren't involved. And that was gathered by Cyber Psychology, also in 2020. 64% of adolescents are sometimes or often exposed to hate-based content on social media, which was gathered by the Office of the Surgeon General in 2023. Adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media are twice as likely to experience poor mental health outcomes, and young females and minorities are at higher risk of harm for more social media use. That was gathered by the legal counsel staff in 2024. Almost half, 45% of US teens say they spend too much time on social media, which is an increase from previous years. More than 4 in 10 teens say that their social media use hurts the amount of sleep they get. 45%. That is 45%. And sleep is such an important part to our lives, to our hormone health, to our nervous system regulation, to our attention span, to our mood, our actual enjoyment of life. It affects their productivity by 40%, and that is by Pew Research in 2025. Social media can drive social comparison, which can then contribute to somebody's body dissatisfaction, eating disorders, and depressive symptoms. 40% of teens ages 13 to 17 said social media made them feel worse about their body image. That was also gathered by the Office of the Surgeon General in 2023. More than 1/3 of the girls ages 11 to 15 say they feel addicted to social media. Again, gathered by the Office of the Surgeon General in 2023. These statistics, this information isn't meant to point fingers. None of us are doing it wrong because none of us have ever had to do this before. And that is what I tell my daughter on a regular basis. I need you to give me some grace. I need you to give me some grace because no parents have ever had to navigate the things that we are currently navigating as moms and dads or grandparents or aunts and uncles. We are all just trying to figure it out the best we can. To not fear technology, but to utilize it in an empowering way while understanding the negative side effects that can show up within our lives so that we can have good conversations, so that we can connect with our children and be a safe space for them when they are struggling. There has never been parents who have had to navigate as much as we currently have to navigate in this world right now. There is so much that is changing. There is so much that is rapidly changing. And it leaves us feeling uncertain. It leaves us feeling lost. It leaves us feeling as though we have no idea what the fuck we're doing. To be honest, I don't really feel like I have any idea what I'm doing on a regular basis, but I'm trying. I'm trying to learn and I'm trying to grow and I'm trying to do the best things that I can to protect my children. For the younger ones, Roblox and the accessibility that allows. Do my children play on Roblox? Yes, with an adult in the room. And when I know what it is that they are on in private, not private chat rooms, but like on a private server. That's the word I'm looking for. There have been young people who have lost their lives because they have become victim to predators that are searching for vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Sometimes that can be somebody that's in your 5th period health class that's bullying you, or sometimes that can be a 50-year-old man that's pretending to be he's 14. Those are the realities of our world. And those are the realities that we have to not alone protect ourselves from, but protect these kids. And I think that when we can exercise discernment, that when we can be led into informational conversations, it's not just a because I said so, it's because I love you and I want to protect you, and this is why. This is what you could be accessing. So when my oldest daughter is allowed to enter into the environment of social media, I want her to do it with that foundation of being aware. Being aware. So much of it comes back to self-awareness. So much of it comes back to discernment and making decisions. And I think that that's a powerful thing. I think that that is a powerful thing for us to have access to, especially at a young age. And so I'm doing my best. And I try to exercise those boundaries myself so that then I can set that example for my kids. so that we can live a life that isn't in comparison to those that we see online. There's so many things that we can consume or that we can witness in somebody else's highlight reel that we take as their reality. Maybe they are buying toys and unboxing them online. And I'm not talking just one, it's like 15, 15 dumplings that they're unboxing on a YouTube video. And how that can play into the consumerism of the world, how that can make you think that this stuff is going to bring you joy, how it can make money feel irrelevant when it is a very relevant piece of our reality. It opens us up to be able to have conversations. It opens us up to be able to be vulnerable and understand that, yeah, we can feel a little bit of FOMO sometimes if we don't have access to these things, or if other people are out living in a reality that's very different and separate from ours. But what we can do with that self-awareness is also realize, understand, and utilize that that doesn't dictate our worth. The reflection of what is shown through the lens of social media isn't the reality. It's one perspective. And I think that it's important for us to just have as many conversations, loving conversations, as we can to protect our energy, to protect the energy of our children, to understand that we don't have to be accessible to everybody all the time, and that we can utilize these spaces as tools for connection, tools for creativity, but they're not a reflection of our worth. They're not a reflection of who we are based on how aesthetically pleasing our life is presented online. The decisions that we make for ourselves and for our kids are very impactful to the relationships that we can have, the relationships that they can have, and the ripple effect that can be seen throughout all of our lives. And I hope, if anything, this conversation allows you to ask yourself some questions, to reflect on your relationship with social media, reflect on the social media boundaries that you have, the conversations that you have with your kids, the check-ins that you have with them, or the ways in which that these platforms are affecting you mentally, emotionally, sometimes even physically. And I think it's important. I think it's important for us to continue to reflect, to ask ourselves questions, to be aware, to do so lovingly. And like I said, I highly recommend watching the documentary on Netflix, The Social Dilemma. I think it has really great information. And I think it's important for us to tune out the noise so that we can find clarity within, so that we can have hard conversations and uncomfortable conversations, and that we can be a light in the midst of so much darkness. And like I said, if you find yourself struggling, you are not alone. There is help out there for you. And just because you're witnessing the highlight reel of somebody else's life on social media doesn't mean that they are not struggling. It doesn't mean that you are alone in your feelings and in your emotions. Ask for help. Reach out for help. Get an astrological birth chart done by yours truly. See yourself differently for all the magic that is within, not in reflection of the validation that you receive by likes or comments or followers. Your beauty, your magic is all in here. It's all inside. You have the power of who you allow access to it. And when your body tells you, when your mind is feeling overactive, please be willing to take a step back. Please be willing to give yourself some space so that you can understand what it is that you value, that you need through your intuition and clarity instead of the noise of the world. Like I said, I hope that this conversation felt loving, informational, even when it's uncomfortable to hear. And if you ever have any questions or need any further support, I am always here for you. I am always here for you. If you resonated with this conversation or you have someone in your life that you feel needs to hear it, please share, subscribe, follow, drop a comment, DM me, come say hi over on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook at Turn the Page Podcast. And know that, again, there's no judgment in this conversation and the decisions that we've made. We are all doing this for the first time together. But I think that it's important to have the conversation, to open up the space, and to do so with love. And as I navigate my relationship with social media and help my daughter to navigate her relationship with it when that time comes, I can't wait to learn from all of you, from the beautiful people in my life, and from these resources that have been gathered for us to be able to see the hindsight of some of these decisions that are infecting our society in such a prominent way. I love you all. I'm grateful to you and to this platform, the ways in which it's brought me friendships and connections and being a way for me to utilize my creativity. But I also have the discernment and the understanding to know that it can be a very sharp, double-edged sword. All right. Until next week, I wish you well. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful day. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.